The second movement, which is really also quite wonderful, is an allegretto, as it's called, and this has such a wonderful, quiet beginning, and then it keeps building and building and building, and then it builds, and then finally ends very, very quietly. And that movement of that symphony was so popular that at the time of Beethoven, and shortly after his death, this movement was actually, and it's hard to believe for us today, inserted into other symphonies, just because it was that popular. And it was the thing to do in those days, which it no longer is, to applaud between the various movements of a symphony. And they knew that if they played the second movement of the seventh, there'd be great applause. Now, no one would dare do something like that today, but it is absolutely wonderful, and I would suggest that if people have never heard the Beethoven Seventh, have never experienced it, they need to come and listen to it, because it does absolutely grow on you. And the third movement is also a wonderful movement for the fact that in having the constraint of having only three movements, it has a wonderful ending. It has a wonderful ending, a wonderful cadence to it, and it's called a presto, which means fast, and it is really quite wonderful. It is, I think, something that everyone will really enjoy, because this is not, as some people say, oh, it's boring classical music. It isn't boring at all. This symphony has movement, and you could close your eyes, you could imagine dances and all kinds of things with it. It's really quite wonderful.
You know, that's one of my favorite things to do, is when I'm flipping through the channels, and again, one of our sponsors of our show is Charter, and they've got the music channels at the very end. And let's be honest, there aren't very many radio stations out there that pertain to classical music anymore.
Sadly.
And I'll just turn it on in the background just for ambiance. And you'll get some of those moods, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Some that totally relax you, and then some actually makes you go around the house like crazy. You know?
That's true. I was at a dinner party once, and afterwards we were talking, and someone said, "You know what the background music was?" And I didn't pay that much attention to it, and I thought, well, it was just, you know, music. And they showed me, and it was the Handel organ concerti. Now, I would not have thought of playing Handel's organ concerto as a background for anything, but it was, we put it on again and listened to it very, very low volume. Mm-hmm. And really, it was really quite lovely music. And so, it's just, I think a lot of people don't really know classical music, and they think it's either going to be boring or too stiff collar, as they used to say, but it really isn't. And when Beethoven brought this music out, he rather took the music of Haydn and Mozart, which had been the very classical sit straight in your chair symphonies, and he brought it to the people. He brought emotion to it. And that began what would be called today the Romantic era, ending kind of the classical era of Haydn and Mozart, and going to this great Romantic era, which then gave rise to Schubert and Berlioz and Schumann, and up through into Brahms and Wagner and so forth. So this is music for the people. And he really had the feeling of, and remember, and Beethoven was deaf. He was deaf after 1802. I mean, he's 32 years old. He heard the music only in his mind. He never heard it audibly. And for a composer of this type, of this importance, not to be able to audibly hear his music was really phenomenal. And he had a great deal of grief, and he hated the fact that he was deaf, and yet this music was in him, and he produced it.
Well, it's one of the, actually, you know, we talk about how it is that we can bring symphony and classical music to today's generation, and to me, for my generation, it had been 1995 where classical music made a little more of a headway. And in 1995, Kathleen, she's smiling, Mr. Holland's Opus came out. Now, I know that there was some factual information in there that was not correct, and then there was also some that were, but the bottom line was it inspired, I thought, another generation of people to come out and actually enjoy classical and maybe realize that some of the music that you hear today was inspired by that classic age.
Oh yes, and when Amadeus came out, suddenly some kids who really liked Tom Hulce in the role went out and bought some Mozart and started listening to it, which was really phenomenal. I mean, it was really great, and when you think of the music he put out, and dying at such an early age, just fabulous music. Some of it funny and cute music, and some of it very serious, but absolutely wonderful music. And then, getting back to Beethoven, a short time ago, the movie called Immortal Beloved which they found a letter after he died that was addressed to Immortal Beloved, but it's been a great mystery as to who Immortal Beloved was, this love of his life. And so the film was written trying to find out who this was, and of course the musical score in the film of Beethoven's music. Go rent the film. Go rent it, called Immortal Beloved. I think Gary Oldman played the role of Beethoven. Absolutely wonderful. And hopefully people will look at that and get an idea of who this man Beethoven was and how important he is to us to this day.
Well, let's backtrack here and get back to the task at hand. And that is, we want people to go on out and enjoy the symphony. And tell us, Kathleen, about when these performances are going to be taking place again.
Well, Monday night's performance starts at 7:30 at Smith Cotton's Auditorium, and tickets are $20 at the door, but children get in free. And that's one of the things that, as a symphony board, we really focused on. We want students to come because we need the younger generation to get passionate about it and get in the habit of going to live concerts, because we don't want this to end. Then, like we said, there's the intermission, and then the guest artist River City Ramblers perform. And afterwards, we have a little reception over in the cafeteria. And it's kind of disappointing that we have this all set up and sometimes maybe only 30 people come over. And it's a great opportunity to get to meet the guest artists. If they brought CDs to sell, they'll autograph them. And it's just a mingle time. You have a cookie and a little cup of punch and actually speak to the performers.
And it's open to everyone in the audience. And not only children are free, but all students are free.
State Park Community College music students get in free as well.
Well, we hope people take advantage of this, and should they have any questions, I think there's a phone number that you want to pass along, or is there other information that you want to get a hold of?
They can just call me, 826-6143, and pass on the information. We've got the two big concerts in the spring coming up. We do March 2nd is Mia Hines from Warrensburg. She's a doctor of piano up there at UCM. And UCM.
Yes.
Yes.
University of Central Missouri.
Yes,
Missouri.
They changed their letters.
Yeah, that's hard.
It happens.
Yes.
My diploma still says CMSU, but
Right.
we go with
Right.
UCM.
Yeah. So she's on March 2nd, and then on April 20th, Derry Dalzall is a cellist, and that ought to be a real treat because that's not an instrument that you hear featured solo that often, and quite an eclectic range of music, from the real toe-tapping stuff today, and I don't know what Mia will be performing, but I think Derry has composed several things or altered them to be for cello. So it's an exciting season. And then we're planning really big stuff for next year.
Well, we're looking forward to that. And this actually is possibly, knock on wood, good Lord, going the last year you'll be at the Smith Cotton School for the current one, because I know that you have plans in the work to hopefully be at the new school whenever that does happen.
Be at the new school, state-of-the-art theater, and more comfortable seating, more seating. And so when we bring in a really big name, we'll have the capacity to do that.
Unbelievable, guys. Well, listen, I appreciate your time, and I remember you guys said didn't know if you can go 15 minutes. For official record's sake, I have 16 minutes and 20 seconds at this point in time. So, guys, we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you for inviting us, and we would welcome everyone in the area to come out to the Sedalia Symphony season.
It's now 9:54, and by the way, if you missed out or didn't hear parts of this, you can also take a visit to SedaliaNewsJournal.com, where it looks like we're going to be on the World Wide Web at some point in time through the website there. Anyhow, 9:55, we'll take a break, look at your weather forecast on KSIS.